It is true that despite being its birthplace, spaghetti bolognese cannot be found on any menu in the magnificent city of Bologna, which also spawned Guglielmo Marconi, famous inventor of the telegraph, which sent the iconic Pony Express into bankruptcy in 1861. Bologna is also the home of the Marconi Institute of Creativity and the world's largest creativity conference, and host to Dr. Andre Walton televised presentation, Creativity, the Individual or the Group. My granddaughter is now 5 years old, and I've been watching her grow up. Every day she has a thought that leads to an action which is a little bit different than before. In other words, every day she thinks something or generates an idea that changes her world. That means everybody was creative. The process of growing up and learning becomes creative. It is inherently creative. I'm not saying we're all equally creative. Thus, when studying creativity, maybe we need to recognize it as a social phenomenon. First, understand that before we turn the microscope on individuals. Because over the last 150 years that people have been studying creativity from the individually based perspective, we have really uncovered remarkably little. Things like we need to be motivated. Well, anybody eminent, whether they're creative or not, needs to get up in the morning. So really, the individual study of creativity, I don't believe, has been terribly successful. And maybe we will end up studying what suppresses creativity, why our 9-year-old suddenly becomes, or becomes in the course of socialization, not so creative. Humans are a mass of contradictions. We spend our lives having certain goals and taking actions that do not appear to be moving in that direction. There is a particular contradiction that I want to focus on right now. All human beings have a major need for connectedness with others. We need to be part of groups. Maybe you'll share with us a few of the groups that you belong to.
Family, university, friends, hopefully.
That's the penalty for sitting in front, by the way. Okay, so we have family, we have work, we have friends, school, church, recreation, just a few, and I'm sure you can add at least 1,000 more. One of the things that happens when people are put in a situation of fear is that they tend to become much closer to their group. And after the terror of September 11, 2001, millions of US flags started to appear on people's porches, on their car antennae. And that was a clear indication that people were associating more closely with the group, their nation. Okay, so groups can be very, very small. They can be just 2 people. Or in fact, they can be millions of people, nearly all of whom we don't know. They can perhaps be the 2,000 friends that one of my students claims to have on Facebook. So these can all be our in-group. So when we're associating with our in-groups in any way, whatever, it is our similarity with others that becomes important to us. That's the salient issue. And these are not trivial. I mean, our group memberships are absolutely vital. If you deprive people of their ability to have group memberships, they will not remain stable for very long. This is solitary confinement, probably one of the worst of all punishments that you can dole out to somebody. In amongst this mass of contradictions, we have also got the need to be, and to be seen to be, unique, to have our own degree of novelty. The inability to demonstrate uniqueness also has negative consequences for well-being. The display of uniqueness is, of course, the display of our creativity. This is the area where creativity comes from. Otto Rank, back in the 1800s, considered that our display of creativity, this display of uniqueness, was also an attempt to gain immortality. But in this particular case, it's not our similarity with others that we're focusing on, it is our difference from others. These are two opposing drives. The implications from this are that we have to depart from the comfort of the group in order to maximize our creative potential. Any force that's in the direction of connectedness is the force against the motivation to create. I mentioned the horrors of 9/11 a little bit earlier. There is quite a bit of evidence that overall in the US, creativity actually went down after 9/11. There's clear implications for this theory with regard to the current trend for teams. Team building, as you know, has been the buzzword of the business profession for 20, 30 years. And there is also evidence that creativity in an organizational setting has not been improved by the use of teams. Innovation, yes. Actual generation of novel ideas, not so much. And of course, brainstorming. Brainstorming is inherently, the way it is traditionally performed, a team activity. And the fathers of brainstorming put a lot of effort into trying to discover why a group of people sent off to ideate individually would come up with more unique ideas than when they sat round a table to do it in a brainstorming format. And that research, although people try and find excuses why it wasn't quite right, that has been conducted in the East, in the West, in large groups, in small groups, and it seems to be difficult to disprove. It gives you some idea of perhaps why brainstorming as a group is not terribly effective. So all is not lost. I mean, I'm not team bashing by any stretch of the imagination, and neither am I trying to ditch brainstorming as an extraordinarily useful tool. But what needs to happen, I think, is that within the notion of brainstorming or teamwork, there has to be space for individual activity. And now, when I conduct brainstorming sessions, the actual ideation portion of the brainstorming, I have people disappear in all different directions, not even in the same room as other people. So successful innovation requires both the space for individuality and the facility to cooperate as a team. When people first come to me, they're not tired, they're stuck. Burnout isn't just a bad week, it's a neurological shutdown. It's what happens when your brain no longer sees possibilities, and that means we have no options. It's what happens when we think convergently, like a racehorse with blinders on. Our world has closed in on us. I call it the hamster wheel effect. We go round and round without seeing any possibility of getting off that wheel. Clients come in saying, I can't sleep. I'm snapping at people I care about. I'm successful, but I feel completely hollow. All is not lost. We just need a reboot. 70% of professionals report burnout in their current job, and many of these people have experienced it repeatedly. Among entrepreneurs, the number is even higher, as it is for millennials, because there's no off switch when you're carrying the vision. Burnout erodes our most valuable capacities, our decision making, our emotional intelligence, our creativity, and ultimately our ability to connect with others and with ourselves. We can't sleep, we can't focus, and we push away those very people who could be of help to us. Gone untreated, serious burnout can have a fatal conclusion. Spherical thinking is how we move from collapse to clarity. It's a neural rewiring process that engages your analytical and creative mind. So we can stop cycling through those old thinking patterns, get off that hamster wheel, if you like, and start expanding our range of perception. I say rewiring because it relies on thinking processes that we all once used when we were 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 years old. I'm sure you don't remember those too clearly, but I spent a lot of time with my granddaughters. when they were very, very young, and every day they came to me with some new thing they had found, some new piece of life's great puzzle with which they were trying to make sense of their world. As if they had another piece of the jigsaw puzzle and they were trying to fit it into the pieces they already had. Sometimes they'd try to fit it with other pieces that weren't quite exactly right. The process is creative thinking, and it requires that we think divergently. There is no box lid. You have to look at all the options as to where to put the new puzzle piece. Recovering from burnout requires us to substitute this divergent worldview for the convergent one that our analytical, deductive world has created for us. It's not about working harder. It's about thinking in more directions, creating new neural pathways. Interestingly, those divergent neural pathways are the same ones we use when we are thinking emotionally intelligently. And they are also associated with being happier. It's a triple whammy. I want you to close your eyes for a second. Now imagine a moment when you were thinking something creative. Try and find a recent activity or thought that was a novel solution or idea, maybe a sea change in your work or home life, or a new recreation or other activity. Now contrast that with how you think when you're feeling overwhelmed. You've just visualized using two different neural states. This is how we begin rewiring. This is how we start the comeback. We blend neuroscience with lived experience. You're not weak. Your brain has just had an update, a reboot. Together, we build one. Burnout isn't the end of the story. It's the beginning of our reinvention. Not just for you, but for your team, your business, your impact, your relationships. And the creation of new patterns of thinking carries with it powerful and positive changes. As you might imagine from the phrase creative thinking, we become more innovative. And this leads to having many more options. Back in 1939, when advertising executive Alex Osborne invented brainstorming, he fondly believed that it would magnify the number of new ideas that his team would create by a factor of around 10. He spent the rest of his life attempting to figure out why this was not the case. It transpired that if you took each individual in a 6-person brainstorming team and had them create ideas individually, you would get more novel ideas than when they brainstormed together. Now imagine what a business, what life would be like if everyone thought creatively, as a matter of course. I'll give you one example. When Toyota started their employee suggestion program back in 1951, employees were not given any training or direction. But there were 789 ideas entered into the system that first year. It grew steadily over the next 15 years until the number of annual suggestions in 1967 exceeded 20,000. In the next 2 years, after some creative thinking guidance, this doubled. So in 1969 you were talking 40,000, and then in 1970 you were talking around 50,000 suggestions. When you learn to think in new dimensions with new neural pathways, you unlock a whole new system of thinking. You unlock a future with no spreadsheet can predict. I'm going to give you some ideas as to how to get going with this process. First, this is not the process for resolving fully fledged burnout. This is a simple technique for gaining the other benefits from creative thinking, and it does help you guard against extreme anxiety and burnout. Start on your own with a few small incremental changes in your everyday life. Take a new route to work and actively see the new surroundings it takes you through. As much as you can safely, of course, while you're driving to work. Try something different on the menu if you go to your usual dinner spot, or even try a different restaurant.
Make yourself a different beverage when you wake up in the morning, rather than aiming towards the K-cup. Plan new activities with the family for next weekend. Maybe a picnic instead of going to the mall. Get with family and friends to discuss new recreational activities. But most importantly, during your routine activities at home and at work, really examine each and question how and why you're doing it. Could it be done differently? Maybe the introduction of AI could help reduce your workload. Sometimes we establish routines for a particular purpose and then continue them even when the original goal has been met. Now, all this could be exhausting at first. Creative thinking uses very different processes than the ones we use for our automated cognitive processes that we use for repetitive activities. We don't often think about thinking as an energy-consuming activity, but these new processes can use as much energy as going for a stroll for the same amount of time. You can expand on these ideas in many ways. When you see something strange or funny, take 10 minutes and write something about it. This can be a great opportunity to develop creative thinking patterns. Charles Darwin did a great job of mapping out how we evolved from the primordial ooze to where we are now. But having opposable thumbs does not explain the iPhone, the internet, or the jet engine. Creativity is not a recreation or something Aunt Dottie did when she retired and bought a paint box. It is the source of our social evolution and something we all once had. Let's rekindle creative thinking together.